They called her defective beneath the crystalline spires of Viridian Colony, where the air shimmered with particles of synthesized oxygen and the twin suns cast violet shadows across chrome boulevards. Lyra sat motionless in her mobility chair, watching through the transparent walls as other brides-to-be glided past in their ceremonial gowns, their laughter echoing like wind chimes through the departure terminal. Every rejection letter glowed red in her neural interface, each one a fresh wound. Her legs, paralyzed since birth in her species' low-gravity environment, had made her invisible to every potential mate in the intergalactic marriage registry. Everyone except him. And what this widowed father with a grieving daughter would do next would shatter every rule the colony had ever known. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The Viridian Marriage Registry occupied the tallest spire in the colony, its walls lined with holographic profiles of available brides from 73 different worlds. Lyra had been displayed here for 2 standard years, her image flickering weakly in the least visible corner. She wheeled herself through the morning crowd, her chair's anti-gravity pads humming softly. Around her, prospective grooms moved with purpose, tall Arctarians with silver skin, wealthy Terran merchants in tailored suits. None of them looked at her. "Another viewing session, dear?" Administrator Velk asked without looking up. "You know the statistics. Your profile has been accessed 4 times this month. No requests for introduction. The morning auction was about to begin." Holographic projections of brides rotated slowly, each accompanied by genetic compatibility scores, cultural adaptability ratings, physical capabilities. Lot 47, Seraphina of Centauri 6, genetic health score 94, no physical limitations. Bidding began immediately, climbing into hundreds of thousands of credits. Lyra watched from her position near the exit. She'd long ago stopped hoping to be called to the main floor. "Look, it's the broken doll again." A voice cut through her thoughts. Dexar stood near the refreshment station, his green Viridian skin gleaming with expensive bio-enhancements, each scale edged in gold nanoparticles. "Still waiting for your prince, Lyra. Maybe he'll come with a miracle cure, or maybe he'll just need someone to polish his floors." His friends laughed. Lyra activated her chair's forward movement, intending to leave, but Dexar stepped into her path. "Running away? That's all you can do, isn't it? You know what your real value is. The registry keeps you here as a tax write-off. Charity case." "Move," Lyra said quietly. "Or what?" Dexar crouched to her eye level. "Listen, broken thing. Tomorrow I'm buying Celestine of Andromeda, pure bloodline, perfect body, everything you'll never be." "Excuse me." The voice came from behind Dexar. It was quiet, but carried weight that made him straighten immediately. A human stood there, a Terran in working-class clothing, a small girl clutching his hand. His dark hair was touched with grey at the temples, his eyes carrying the weariness that came from loss. "You're blocking the lady's path," the man said simply. Dexar's face flushed darker green. "This doesn't concern you, human. It concerns me if you're being discourteous. Please move." The amphitheater went quiet. Humans were rare here, tolerated but considered beneath notice. "Do you know who I am? My family controls 3 mining planets. Dad," the little girl whispered, tugging his hand. "Is the blue lady okay?" The man looked down at his daughter, then at Lyra. Their eyes met. In that moment, Lyra saw something she hadn't seen in years. Simple human recognition. Not pity, not calculation. Just acknowledgement that she was there, she was real, she mattered. "She will be," he said. Then to Dexar, "Last chance. Move." Dexar laughed. "You think you can..." but the human had pulled out a data chip, holding it where Velk could see it. "I'm here to register a formal courtship request for viewing slot 327. That was Lyra's designation number. The amphitheater erupted in whispers. "Sir, that profile is... perhaps you've made an error." "No error. I'm requesting formal introduction to Lyra of Aquaria. Today. Now." Lyra's breath caught. In 2 years, no one had requested an introduction. "This is a joke," Dexar sputtered. "You can't possibly... I have 20,000 credits as the standard introduction fee. My genetic profile is on file with Terran Medical. I'm employed, I own my transport vessel, and I have no criminal record. I believe that meets your requirements." Velk scrolled frantically through her data pad. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Aldrich. Aldrich Thorne. This is my daughter, Emma." The little girl waved shyly at Lyra. "Mr. Thorne, perhaps you're unaware of the specific challenges associated with Profile 327. I can read. I read her entire profile 3 times, and I'm not interested in anyone else." Lyra found her voice. "Why?" Aldrich turned to her fully. "Because Emma's mother died a year ago, and before she passed, she made me promise something. She said, 'Find someone who knows what it's like to be invisible. Find someone who understands that love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing the person everyone else overlooks.'" His voice cracked slightly. "I've been searching every registry in this sector, and when I saw your profile, when I read how you taught yourself 17 languages, how you volunteer to translate for refugees who can't afford interpreters, that's when I knew my wife had been right. The best people are usually the ones no one's looking at." But while the hall hung on every word, Velk's datapad began flashing red, a priority alert from the Colonial Council, and the message that appeared would turn this moment into something far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. "Mr. Thorne, I'm going to need you to come to my office, privately. Whatever needs to be discussed can be discussed here," Aldrich replied, not moving from his protective position near Lyra's chair. Velk's scales rippled, a Viridian tell for extreme discomfort. "I really must insist, and I must insist on transparency. I've filed a formal request. Is there a legal reason it cannot proceed?" The administrator's 3 eyes blinked in complex patterns. "The Colonial Council has special provisions regarding Profile 327. "What provisions?" Lyra asked, her voice stronger now. Velk wouldn't meet her eyes. "The Aquarian Embassy submitted a formal request 2 years ago. Any courtship of you requires their explicit approval. They claim custodial rights due to your status." "My status?" "I'm 24 standard years old. I'm not a child." "No, but you're classified as a genetic anomaly requiring cultural protection. The embassy's position is that allowing you to marry off-world would be a poor reflection on Aquarian genetic standards." The words hung in the air like poison. Aldrich's jaw tightened. "They're blocking her from getting married because she makes them look bad. It's more complicated than..." "No, it really isn't. They've trapped her here. Put her in the registry where she'll be rejected over and over, but won't let her actually leave. She's not a person to them. She's an embarrassment they want to hide." Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. Hearing it said aloud made it real. There must be an appeal process. There is. You can formally challenge the custodial claim. It would require a hearing before the Embassy's Council of Genetic Standards. "Fine. Request the hearing." "Mr. Thorne, these hearings can take months, sometimes years, and the Embassy has never, not once, granted independence to someone they've classified as requiring protection. There's a first time for everything. Aldrich." Lyra's voice stopped him. "You don't want this fight. The Embassy has resources you can't imagine. They'll make your life hell, and they'll win." They always win. Let them try. Why? Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Aldrich knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. Emma, tell Lyra what Mommy used to say about dragons. The little girl stepped forward. Mommy said that dragons guarded treasures. But the real treasure wasn't gold. It was the people everyone else was too scared to see. And brave knights didn't kill dragons. They made friends with them and found the treasure together. Aldrich smiled sadly. My wife was right about people. The best ones are always guarded by dragons, fear, prejudice, bureaucracy, whatever, but that doesn't mean they're not worth finding. I spent a year searching profiles, and I found dozens of women who were perfect on paper. Not one of them mentioned volunteering. Not one mentioned learning languages for fun. Not one had written about wanting to help others. You're the only one who did. And if I have to fight an entire embassy to prove that matters more than genetics, then that's what I'll do. You'll lose everything. Maybe. Or maybe we'll win. Either way, Emma will learn that some things are worth fighting for. Lyra looked at his hand, calloused from work, scarred, a working man's hand. Real. She took it. All right, let's fight dragons. Velk sighed. I'll submit the formal challenge, but Mr. Thorne, you should know. The embassy will assign you an opposition advocate whose sole job is to prove you're unfit. Who? Ambassador Then. He's never lost a case, ever. No one believed they would even try. But the document that Velk generated carried with it a clause that no one had noticed. A clause that would change everything in exactly 72 hours. The news spread through Viridian Colony like wildfire. By evening, every datasphere buzzed with the story. Aldrich's apartment became a fortress under siege. News drones circling, communication consoles flooding with messages. He ignored them all, sitting at the kitchen table helping Emma with homework, while Lyra watched from the window. Lyra accessed the public datasphere. The conversation was evolving in real time. User: this human is either the stupidest or bravest person in the sector. User: finally someone standing up to genetic purism. User: 20 credits says embassy wins in under a week. You should read this, Lyra said quietly. I know what they're saying. Let them talk. They're saying you're using me, that you'll abandon me once you realize what caring for someone like me actually requires. He set down Emma's homework. Are you having second thoughts? Lyra was silent. Through the window, she could see the colony's twin suns setting. She'd watched those suns set alone for 2 years. I've been alone a long time. I've gotten used to expecting nothing. And now you're here, making me hope for things I'd trained myself not to want. So yes, I'm terrified. Good, because I'm terrified too, but Emma deserves a mother. You deserve a family. And I deserve to keep my promise. So we're going to try. Miss Lyra? Emma looked up. Are you going to be my mom? The question hung in the air. Aldrich started to intervene, but Lyra raised a hand. I don't know, Emma. Would you want that? Emma considered seriously. Daddy says you're really smart and brave, and you have a cool chair. Can I ask you something? Anything. Does it hurt, not being able to walk? Emma, Aldrich began, but Lyra interrupted. It's okay. Sometimes, not the way you might think. My legs don't hurt, but my heart does, sometimes. When people stare at me like I'm broken, when they decide I'm not good enough without ever talking to me, that hurts more than anything physical. Emma nodded slowly. My heart hurts too, since Mommy died. So maybe if your heart hurts and my heart hurts, we could hurt together. And maybe it would hurt less. Lyra's breath caught. Yeah, maybe it would. A chime interrupted. Aldrich's console flashed. Viridian Colonial Authority. His face went pale as he read. The hearing has been scheduled. 72 hours from now, and they've made it public. They're turning it into a spectacle. Lyra felt cold. They want to make an example. There's something else you should know, Lyra said softly. Ambassador Then is my uncle. The words landed like stones. You're what? My mother's brother. He's the one who had me classified as requiring protection in the first place. He's not just the embassy's prosecutor. He's personally invested in keeping me here. That night, a message arrived with the official embassy seal. Mr. Thorne, your petition has been reviewed. However, I feel compelled to warn you. What you are attempting is not only futile, but potentially harmful. Lyra's condition represents fundamental genetic incompatibility with standard Aquarian biology. I have known my niece since birth. I will prove at the hearing that your petition, however well-intentioned, is based on ignorance. I suggest you withdraw and spare us all this spectacle. Ambassador Then. Lyra read it over his shoulder. He's not wrong about everything. I do have limitations. Caring for me will be complicated. I'm not looking for easy. Living is not easy, but we do it anyway, because the alternative is worse. The alternative is giving up. Accepting that some people don't deserve love because they're inconvenient. Deciding that genetic perfection matters more than being a good person. Your uncle wants to protect you from risk, but he's really protecting the embassy from embarrassment. And that's not love, that's control. And just when everyone thought they would break under the weight of the embassy's power, someone accessed the data sphere from an anonymous account and released a document that no one expected. Lyra's original genetic classification report. And buried in that report was a note that changed everything. Subject displays abnormal neural development. Cognitive processing exceeds projected baseline by 340%. Recommend further study. The embassy had known for 22 years that Lyra wasn't genetically inferior. She was genetically advanced, and they'd buried it. The judicial chamber had never held so many people. Every seat filled. Representatives from a dozen species, media drones hovering, protesters outside holding signs in 17 languages. The room itself was a spherical space with zero gravity pods for officials and tiered seating for observers. Lyra entered wearing traditional Aquarian ceremonial attire, her paralyzed legs visible. A deliberate statement that she wouldn't hide. Ambassador Then was already positioned at the prosecution platform, wearing full diplomatic regalia. When his eyes met Lyra's, something flickered in them. The council filed in. 3 judges representing the Galactic Legal Authority, 2 embassy representatives, and Administrator Velk. Chief Justice Kale, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into prismatic patterns, activated the recording systems. We are convened to address Petition TH-4472, Aldrich Thorne versus the Aquarian Embassy. Ambassador Then, your opening statement. Then rose, his movements carrying centuries of legal tradition. Honored Council, we are here because a well-meaning but misguided individual has challenged a system designed to protect the vulnerable. Mr. Thorne believes he is rescuing my niece. In reality, he is exposing her to dangers he cannot comprehend. He activated holographic displays, medical charts, genetic sequences, mobility assessments. Lyra of Aquaria was born with a genetic variation that rendered her unable to function in standard Aquarian environments. Our species evolved in zero gravity. We swim through air currents. Lyra cannot do this. Her condition is fundamentally incompatible with our species' basic environmental requirements. The display shifted to show Aquarian cities, breathtaking structures suspended in zero gravity, beings gliding through air. The embassy classified her as requiring protection because without specialized accommodation, she cannot survive in our homeworld. And Mr. Thorne cannot provide those accommodations. He has no medical training. limited financial resources. He lives in a ground-based apartment designed for bipedal terrestrial species. He paused. The embassy has provided Lyra with lifetime medical support, housing adapted to her needs, comprehensive care plans. Mr. Thorne offers a 2-bedroom apartment in an industrial sector, employment as a freighter pilot with unpredictable hours, and a 6-year-old child. It was devastating, built entirely on practical reality. No emotion, no cruelty, just facts. I asked the council to consider what happens after the romantic gesture fades, when Mr. Thorne realizes that caring for Lyra requires constant adaptation, when his daughter resents the attention diverted, when Lyra confronts that love cannot overcome biological limitation. He sat down. Chief Justice Cale turned to Aldrich. Mr. Thorne, your response? Aldrich stood, wearing the same working-class clothing. Honored Counsel, Ambassador Then is right about a lot. I'm not rich. I don't have medical training. I work long hours. My apartment is small, and caring for Lyra will be complicated. But he's wrong about what matters. He activated his own display, simple text files. This is Lyra's volunteer record, 3 years translating for refugees. Not because she was paid, because she saw people suffering and decided to help. This is her thesis on interspecies communication, rejected not because it was wrong, but because institutions decided someone with her background couldn't possibly have written something so insightful. This is her linguistic certification in 17 languages, all self-taught. He looked at the council. Ambassador Then wants you to focus on what Lyra can't do. I want you to see what she has done against every obstacle. She didn't just survive, she excelled. The genetic report proves I'm not defective. Lyra suddenly spoke, wheeling herself forward. Dr. Nexia's research, the suppressed research, proves the embassy buried the truth. And my own accomplishments prove I'm capable of determining my own path. An elderly Aquarian female stood from the gallery. I'm Dr. Nexia, senior geneticist retired from the Aquarian Research Institute. I filed the original report on Lyra, and I have documentation proving the embassy suppressed my findings. The chamber exploded. Dr. Nexia made her way to the witness platform carrying a data chip. 22 years ago, I discovered that Lyra's genetic variation was not a flaw, but an adaptation. I recommended study. The embassy refused. They classified my report as preliminary and told me to cease research. She inserted the chip. Documents flooded the displays, decades of suppressed research, internal communications. They didn't protect Lyra, they protected themselves, from questions about what happens when their genetic models fail to predict reality. And then the final revelation. Buried in one document was a name everyone had forgotten. Dr. Sarah Thorne, Aldrich's deceased wife, had been part of the original research team 20 years ago, before her illness forced retirement. She hadn't just inspired his search. She'd been part of the investigation into Lyra's condition all along. After an hour of deliberation, the council reconvened. The crowd had grown impossibly larger. Protest groups outside chanted, "Genetic freedom, choice not custody." Chief Justice Kyle's crystalline form had settled into deep blue. This council has completed its deliberation. Before we deliver our ruling, we wish to address several matters. First, Dr. Nexia's documentation has been entered into evidence. We recommend full investigation into the embassy's research suppression. Second, the genetic classification system will be subject to independent review. Third, Ambassador Then will be formally censured for failure to disclose material information. Then's face remained impassive, but his scales had darkened. However, these administrative matters do not resolve the central question, whether Lyra of Aquaria should be released from embassy custodial status. Lyra gripped her armrests. Aldrich moved beside her. This case has required us to balance competing principles, individual liberty versus institutional responsibility. Normally, we defer to specialist institutions. Lyra felt hope beginning to crack. However, this case presents extraordinary circumstances. The research suppression, the buried evidence of cognitive enhancement, the systematic denial of opportunities, and most significantly, the testimony of the petitioner herself, demonstrating cognitive capability that exceeds species norm by multiple standard deviations. Kyle paused. Therefore, this council rules as follows. The custodial status imposed by the Aquarian Embassy is hereby dissolved. Lyra of Aquaria is recognized as a fully autonomous adult with all rights and responsibilities. The embassy is enjoined from imposing future classifications without comprehensive independent evidence, and Lyra of Aquaria is free to accept or reject the marriage petition as she sees fit, without embassy interference. The chamber exploded, reporters rushed, protesters erupted in cheers. Dr. Nexia was crying. Emma was jumping and screaming. Lyra and Aldrich remained still, looking at each other in shock and disbelief. "We won," Lyra whispered. "We won," Aldrich confirmed. Then they were both crying, holding each other while Emma climbed onto Lyra's lap and joined the embrace. 3 days later, they stood in a small chapel at the colony's edge. No media, no protesters, just Dr. Nexia as witness, a simple officiant, and a family being born. "I promise to always ask, to always listen, to never assume I know better than you do what's right for your life," Aldrich said. "I promise to be honest about what I need, to ask for help when I need it, and to keep fighting to be more than anyone expects," Lyra replied. "Can I call you Mom now?" Emma whispered loudly. "Yeah, you can call me Mom." 6 months later, Lyra published her thesis, now accepted by 3 major academic journals. Dr. Nexia reopened her research program with Lyra as co-investigator. They discovered 47 other Aquarians classified as defective when they were actually adapted. The Aquarian Embassy underwent massive reforms, then retired to document cases of suppressed genetic research, a kind of penance. Years later, when Emma studied at the Galactic Academy, she wrote, "My mother taught me that the most powerful force in the universe isn't gravity or fusion. It's the courage to choose love when every system tells you it's impossible." Lyra kept that essay beside her doctoral diploma, the one she earned in genetics and adaptive neurology. She specialized in finding hidden potential in genetic variations others called defects. And every person she helped was an echo of the day she'd been sitting invisible in the registry and a stranger had seen her. Sometimes in a universe of billions, it takes just one person refusing to look away to change everything. Sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply believing that different doesn't mean less. And sometimes, the love everyone said was impossible becomes the foundation that changes the galaxy itself.